What's up? Today we are going to do the Pip and the Convict chapter. Okay, so this is quite a long chapter, so I'll be uploading it in two parts, part 1 and part 2. Okay, so let us begin without wasting a nanosecond. So now here I'm going to explain each para to you. Okay, so first let me read it out to you. Pip and the Convict by Charles Dickens. So this is adapted from the book Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. In England, in a lonely village not far from London, lived a boy named Philip, whom everybody called Pip. He had lost his parents when he was a baby and had been brought up by his older sister, the wife of Joe Gregory. Joe was a blacksmith whose forge looked out across with marshes and a river that flowed through them. So this is just an introduction that there was a boy named Philip and he lived in so and so place, that is London, and he was brought up by his older sister and his sister's wife, that is Joe, who was a blacksmith, and he was an orphan, so he was brought out by his elder sister. So this is a very easy part to understand, so I won't elaborate it further. Joe was a mild, honest, good-natured, easygoing, foolish, dear fellow, kind to little Pip, and yet was a Hercules for strength. Now, what is a Hercules? Here, it is a character from Greek mythology used to symbolize strongness or power. Okay, so this is the character sketch of Joe. So many of us are asked questions like about the character sketch of particular characters in stories. So I would request you to all learn the character traits of each of the characters here, okay? Because as we go further into the chapter, you will know the details of each and every character. Very different indeed was Mrs. Joe, as everybody called her. She was tall and bony, had black hair, red skin. So red skin, not actually red skin, it's a kind of a dusky color, and usually Africans have it. Black Americans or Africans have that kind of a skin, so that is referred to as a red skin, and a continual habit of scolding. She may have loved Pip in her way, but in a very cross-grained one. She treated Joe, the big blacksmith, and Pip, the little boy, just alike, and both of them were equally afraid of her. So now just imagine, she is so deadly that even her husband is so scared of her. Whenever Pip came into the house, he used to look at Joe's fingers. If Joe crossed them, it was a sign that Mrs. Joe was cross and that Pip was a lookout for himself. So he had to take care whenever Joe crossed his fingers. He should be prepared, because at that time Mrs. Joe would be very angry. So that was a setting which the two boys had personally done to know. Because that lady was quite rude. She was also very shrewd, and she was thin and bony, and she was very captivating. So in a way, to save themselves from the adverse situation, they would get out by giving each other sign languages. Okay. Besides the blacksmith, the only one who understood Pip was a little girl named Biddy. About his own age and also an orphan, she used to help him with his lessons at school. In spite of Joe and Biddy, Pip was sometimes so lonely and miserable that he would steal off alone to the village churchyard where his father and mother lay buried to cry. Okay, so now he had this another friend of his who used to help him in his lessons and everything, and her name was Biddy, and she was also an orphan and somewhere falling around his age group. So sometimes he had two people in his life, only two people who used to support him, and according to me, two people are more than enough. Okay, but sometimes he would feel so lonely. I think perhaps he was traumatized because of his parents' death. So sometimes he would steal off to the village churchyard. Now what is the meaning of steal off? Slip away quietly without informing anybody. He would go to the village churchyard. So in some churches, just near the church, there is a graveyard. So there are very beautiful graveyards also. They are very well maintained graveyard. So perhaps he is talking of something like that, because even in India you've got churchyards like that. Okay, so here he goes to churchyard to cry near his parents' grave for some consolement, perhaps, because as you know, that Mrs. Joe was quite strict with him, so he might feel hurt. So he cannot express that to Mr. Joe and Biddy, as they will also feel very tense. That's the reason he would go there. Okay. One afternoon, the day before Christmas, Pip feeling more wrenched than usual. He was feeling more, that was the worst day of his life perhaps. He was feeling very, very sad. Okay. Was crying amongst the graves. Suddenly a rough voice startled him. "Keep still, you little imp," it said, "or I'll cut out your throat." So, imp is a kind of an informal language. It means keep still, you little idiot. Instead of saying idiot, he's using the word imp. Okay, so this is quite an informal language. Usually people like convicts and thieves use these languages, not laymen use these. Okay, so as usual, he was crying amongst the grave when somebody rose from behind. Now you might think right now it's some kind of a ghost or a dead body, but no, you will come to know who is that person. Then a man rose from behind a tombstone and seized Pip. Seized means caught hold of Pip. Okay, he was a fearful looking man dressed in grey clothes with a great iron band riveted on his leg. Riveted means fastened, means it was tied, it was like locked to his leg. Okay, that was what? An iron band. I think that was to he is a convict, somebody who is guilty of a crime. Okay, so so the soldiers or the police, whatever you say, might have tried to captivate him by putting that iron band on his leg, and he had somehow managed to escape. So that's the reason he had that iron band on his leg. His shoes were torn and he wore a ragged, dirty handkerchief. Ragged means slightly torn, and the color had gone away, faded away, kind of that. Dirty handkerchief around his head. Completely drenched and caked with mud, the man limped and shivered as he walked. So, he was drenched and caked with mud. It is kind of an exaggeration he is using over here. There is a lot of mud on his body because, of course, I think he was hiding under or somewhere near that tombstone to save himself from the security. Okay, he had somehow managed to escape. You will come to know when I read ahead. Pip had never been so frightened in his life. With a trembling voice, he begged, "Spare me, please." Okay, so you know that he was very frightened of Miss Joe, but he had not been so frightened ever because of that particular man who rose from behind. The man asked him his name and where he lived, and told him that he would let him go on one condition. So there was one condition. Okay, Pip would have to promise to come back the next morning at daybreak. Daybreak means the time between the evening and night, some sort of that, like 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock or somewhere around when everybody goes off to sleep, to a certain spot in the marshes with a sharp file and something to eat. Now file here is not that file you use to store your papers. File here means a knife. Okay, a file is a steel tool with a rough surface used for cutting, smoothing or sharpening hard surfaces. So this is kind of more stronger than a knife or a sword. It is even more stronger. It's like in Hindi you call it a khanjar. So it is quite strong. It is made up of steel. Okay, sharp file and something to eat. He warned him, "If you tell anybody about me or don't turn up tomorrow, I will cut out your heart and eat it." Okay, so now that is not really possible. If he does not come back, the man does not know where he lives. Neither he will do that because he's already guilty of a crime. And if he's doing that, don't you think the others will inform about it? So now he knew that, but the boy didn't. So the boy was small. Pip was a very small boy. He wasn't that big. He wasn't my age or your age. He might be a hardly 6 or 7 years old boy who got very frightened, because children usually get frightened of every small thing. Okay, he was an innocent little boy. Poor little Pip was terrified. His voice shook so much that he could hardly promise, and when the man set him down, he ran home as fast as his legs could carry him. So this line is understood. The evening was a miserable one. It was a very terrible evening for Pip. Of course, if something of this sort happens to you, you might not get scared because of his warning, but you might get scared of the incidents, right? So you might be shaken from inside. because sometimes if some strange incidents happens in front of you which is not a part of your daily routine, you get scared, you have that very weird reaction, you're not able to talk to your family members. That happens to most of us. The evening was a miserable one. Pip thought that he would save his own supper for the man in case he was not able to get into his sister's pantry. So pantry here means kitchen, okay? So instead of eating his bread and butter, he slipped it down his trouser leg. So he just kept it inside his trouser leg. Okay, that's gross, but okay, fine. He did that for the heck of giving that man, because he does not care about the hygiene or anything for that man. He just wants to give out his duties because he had been warned. Before long, a great gun began to boom, and Pip asked Joe what it was. The blacksmith replied, "It is a signal that convicts have escaped from the prison ships on the river across the marshes." It was then Pip realized that the man had promised to help was a criminal, perhaps a murderer who had gone away and was hiding from the soldiers. Okay, so now you might be confused at this particular point. So now he was having his evening supper. Okay, I'm just clearing it out to you. He was having his evening supper, okay, and he was having all these strange thoughts that what he will do if he's not able to get into his sister's kitchen. So he was just doing that act when he realized there was some strange kind of gun booming. Okay, so now in those times he's not of our generation. This shows he's not of our generation. He's of an older generation. That's why there are soldiers instead of the police or instead of the security. Okay, so when the gun began to boom, okay, he asked Joe, okay, what is happening there? Why are there sounds of guns coming? Because of course he's a kid, he does not know. So Joe was just telling him that two convicts in our language we call them murderers, thieves, okay, who are guilty of a particular crime. Okay, so now he was saying that there are two convicts, two thieves or criminals who just escaped from the prison. So perhaps they were taken somewhere by the ship in the prison and they managed to just go out of the ship whenever they got an opportunity to do so. So here even one thing there's this thing which can be asked to you, that where were the convicts captivized, right? So you can say that both the convicts had escaped from the prison ships on the river down the marshes. Okay. It was then that Pip realized that the man he had promised to help was a criminal. Now, of course, no normal person would behave that way. So he just guessed, or I think he knew somewhere in his heart that whosoever he is going to help is a very great criminal. Perhaps a murderer who had got away and was hiding from the soldiers. Okay, so this is what he thought. He was making guesses. Okay, he could not sleep all night, certain that he would be killed if he did not steal the food. Pip crept downstairs at dawn to take some bread and cheese and a meat pie from the pantry. He then got a file from the forge and ran through the foggy morning to the marshes. So now he was very, very, very scared, like he was petrified, he was terrified, whatever you say. So now he could not sleep all night. He did not go at the specified time, okay. I think he perhaps went at 4 o'clock or 3:30 in the morning, because what they are saying is he ran through the foggy morning to the marshes. So whenever the first rays of sun began to come, it is very foggy. So perhaps it was a very cold morning. That's why there was a lot of fog gathered there. So he could not sleep the whole night. He was 100% sure he would be killed if he did not. He was an innocent boy. He did not know that the convict would not be able to come, because he does not know the address. He's a small kid. He's an innocent boy. That's why the convict was tricking him. Okay, so he went downstairs. Somehow he took a bread and a cheese and a meat pie from the pantry. Now don't ask me that what happened to that other bread and butter he had slipped in his trouser leg. Perhaps he might have kept it or ate it, but he got food from the pantry as well. He got extra food. And then he stole a file from the forge. Forge is what? Forge is a, kind of a drawer where you store things. Okay, so he stole it. and then he ran down to that same graveyard where he would where he would cry. Okay, he had not quite reached when he came upon a man in grey sitting on the ground with an iron fetter on his leg. Pip sighed in relief. Here was the man he was looking for. But as soon as he saw the bruise on the man's cheek, he realized that he wasn't. This man sprang to his feet and ran away as soon as he saw Pip. So now he hadn't reached the place. He hadn't gone to the churchyard yet. He was halfway through. Okay, so this is the distance. He had covered only half of it, and then he met some man standing, or sitting over there, and he was also a similar looking man. He also had an iron fetter on his leg like the previous. So now at first, the few minutes, he thought that okay, that is the exact man. Perhaps he was waiting in the middle of the path to save the time. But then he realized there was a bruise on that person's cheek, and that old convict did not have any bruise. So that was the main mark of differentiating the two people. Okay, so now this man wasn't that courageous enough or dangerous, so he just ran away. He thought he might be some spy from the soldiers, so he was just trying to save his life. He did not want to warn anybody. Okay, Pip went on at night. Okay, so so this man sprang to his feet and ran. Okay, yeah, now what is a fetter? Fetter is a kind of a chain. So here, fetter is not exactly, that. So the other convict had something more harder to hold him, but that was just a chain which was on the other convict's leg. Okay, so there is some difference. There's some difference there. Okay, so this man was also wearing grey color clothes, so this was sure that both of them were convicts, and both of them were wearing the dress which is provided to them in the jail. Okay, so now this is the story so far, and this was the part 1, and I want to keep it a mystery until part 2. Okay, so please wait for my part 2. I'll be uploading it soon. Okay, and also I'll be sharing the question and answers and various sorts of notes with you for your reference as well. Until it's me zooming out. Bye and have a wonderful day.